Welcome back to the channel K-Divas. In this video, I'm going to be taking you guys on the journey of creating this one shoulder gown. This piece I fully draped on the mannequin, and draping is not one of my strongest techniques, but I told myself this year I wanted to try it out more. So I show you how I draped the piece on the mannequin, how I cut all of the other parts, the lining, stitched everything together, and the finished gown at the end. This is a piece I plan to pair with the one shoulder detail that I made in a previous tutorial for an upcoming shoot, and when the photos are ready from that shoot I'll share it with you guys. But if you'd like to see how I put this piece together, please keep on watching, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy it, and let's get straight into the process. I have two main materials here to create this piece. The first is this mesh fabric that has a silver glitter on the surface. It is nice and stretchy, so I know I don't need to think about zips or button or fastening with this piece. I also have a plain white mesh, and I had 4 meters of each individual fabric that I'm going to be working with. I'm just going to jump straight in, and I'm draping the front of the gown. I want it to be a one shoulder situation, so I'm just going to one side of my mannequin and pinning that edge of the fabric down first. I want some pleats on the shoulder as like a detail or a feature, and each pleat was about 1 inch wide. When I folded it in, I made about 3 pleats before pinning them in place. And the thing with draping is, honestly, there's no right or wrong way. You just go with your gut feeling, and if you don't like it, you remove the pin, you do it again. However, I want a one shoulder neckline, so I am cutting roughly in this direction. I'm starting my cut from under the arm on the lower side, and I'm cutting towards the shoulder on the side I had the pleated detail. After cutting the neckline, I am pinning down the other side, the lower side that doesn't have a shoulder or a sleeve. And once I have some pins to keep that in place, I am going to be cutting the armhole open on the side with the pleat or the one shoulder feature. And thankfully, mannequins come with points to indicate like where the armhole is, where the side seam is, so that guides you as you are cutting things out. But if it's not perfect, you can always go back in and reshape things. With some pins, I'm just pinning down the armhole or arm opening on this side of the piece, pin it all the way sort of to the back, and then I'm going to come to one side and create this like side pleated details. I just wanted to add some ruching around the bust and the waist area, just like an additional feature. So once I had the top edge pinned, I am going to kind of pull from the bottom upwards and make pleats similar to how I did on the shoulder, and the pleats I did were about 1 inch wide. Thankfully, this fabric is nice and light, so I just had to pull things a little bit, adjust it, drape it across the front to see how it will fall naturally around that part of the body. And I just repeated it for like 3 to 4 pleats on this side. After doing it on this side, I went to the other side and added some more pleats. The thing with the draping technique is you kind of want to create like folds, you want to create shapes that are flattering on the body, so try and keep in mind where things are going to fall. So I wanted my draping and my pleating to kind of be around the lower belly or around the hip area. So once I had made one additional pleat on the other side, I am shaving away the excess along the side seam. When I was cutting away the excess, I cut away by like 1.5 inch. So I have extra measurements to sew, and then I flared out the hemline because I kind of want the silhouette of the dress to be fitted around the bust, the waist, the hip, and kind of flare out as a slight mermaid towards the hem. It wasn't perfect at this point, but later on I went into really neating everything out. For the hemline itself, I am rounding it off from one side to the other, so it's not like a straight line across, it's more like a curved shape. The front of this gown is already giving Grecian goddess vibes, and I was pleasantly surprised with how everything was coming together. But once I had all those pieces in place, I think this is the most important step that I only discovered recently, and it's essentially going in with a needle and thread to hand sew all of the pleats, all of the details that I have added to this, because if I don't hand sew it and I remove the pins, I'm going to lose all of these details I've added to the front of the gown. So I pleated and hand stitched the right side, the left side, as well as the shoulder detail before removing the pins and removing this piece of material from the mannequin. It's essentially just molding the fabric on the mannequin and then hand sewing it to keep the designs in place. And now I'm just pressing in the pleats slightly with my iron just so they hold a little bit of their shape, especially around the side seam. Once I had this front piece done, this is going to act as my pattern in quotes for the back and for the lining pieces. This is what it looks like laid down, but I want the hem area, especially so like the bottom of the gown, I want it to be symmetrical. So I'm going to fold the front of the dress in half, aligning that underarm area of the left to the right. And once I had it folded in half, I'm just going to use my scissors to cut the side seams so it is straight and even on the left and on the right hand side. I also going to reshape the hemline as well so everything is nice and tidy. Now I'm going to be using that draped front piece that I have now neatened out as the guide or my pattern in quotes to cut the back. And I'm going to lay down some pattern weights to ensure that the pleats that I've made on the side, they don't unravel, because I want those to stay pleated, because I don't want the back of the dress to have any gathering on it or any ruching. So I cut out the back using the same front piece. I also cut out a lining pieces. I just cut out a pair of the lining in a plain white mesh fabric, and then I cut the back in the sparkly silver mesh, so we have sparkle on the outside and then plain mesh on the inside. Starting with joining the outer dress, I'm joining the shoulder seams and then the sides of the front and the back. These are already pinned together, and I'm going to be sewing with my overlocker. On the back piece, I actually ended up not having enough fabric, so I had to attach extra fabric at the back hem, which is the reason why there is that seam there. But with my overlocker, I am sewing that way there is ability for the fabric to stretch and the seam will not break when I wear this piece over time. After pressing it down, I just put it on to check how it fits on my body, and so far I am not mad at all. Honestly, I will say it's a little bit loose around the neckline. You can see there's some gaping happening, and that I'm going to be taking away through the side seam. And then I feel like the neckline can come down a little bit lower on the front, and that I'm just going to cut away using a fabric scissors. Now this is the importance of fitting. With a fabric scissors, I'm going to cut away some of the front neckline, and this I'm just going to keep on my body and cut it a little bit lower around the middle and then back to the shoulder point, and then I'm going to cut it down on the side towards the side seam. I only did this on the front. The back I don't mind having higher. I just thought it looked a lot nicer by just reducing it a little bit. Off camera, I went in to stitch away the excess on the side seam on that lower side and assemble the lining, so sewing up the sides and the shoulder seam. And I'm going to be joining the lining to the dress along the neckline first. I had not really made any changes to the lining neckline, so while I was stitching with my overlocker, I just stitched away the excess. But it's just worthy of being aware of the fact that when you do asymmetric necklines or designs, you have to be aware of how to mirror things in such a way that they match up the way they are supposed to. This is what the neckline is looking like so far. I turned it inside out, gave it a nice press, and I'm going to focus on working on the armhole opening. This, to ensure that I'm going to join it in the correct way, I'm going to actually fold them against themselves like this on the outside first, and then just pin it. So on the sleeve head, on that under armhole section, and on the sides. And once that pin is in place, When I turn this piece inside out, so when I kind of like pull the wrong side of the dress out and match the armhole of the lining to the main dress, I know I'm matching it in the right direction, because it can be very confusing to do this if you're not sure of if you are doing it the right way. So doing that pinning step first definitely helps. So now I'm just adding some pins in such a way that when I take this to my machine, I am essentially joining the lining to the main dress along that armhole in the right way. I'm going to take this to my overlocker and I'm going to be stitching them together, so it allows me to connect places in place. And because I'm going to be sewing the front and the back edges, when you sew one side, you would notice that as you reach the bottom, you would have to pull the fabric through to allow you to stitch the other side. After sewing up the armhole, I'm going to turn the dress inside out and pull the right side of the piece so I can check to see if everything is coming together correctly. And so far so good. I'm going to give it a press to relax all of the stitching. And for the hemline, the lining I just overlocked, whereas for the main outer dress, it looked a lot nicer having it as the raw edge. This I just cut out neatly with a sharp scissors, but you can hem your fabric if your fabric would not look bad if it is folded and hemmed, but it just kind of looked better leaving it the way it was. So this is what the front of the dress is looking like, all done. It's a very simple, classy and timeless style that I think wasn't too difficult to drape on the mannequin. It fitted really nicely on the body as well, very comfortable because it's stretchy fabric. For undergarment, I wore a strapless bra and nude knickers. You can also wear shapewear if you really want everything to be nice and smooth while you have it on. But that is the dress all done. I enjoyed this project, I thoroughly did. I can't wait to show you guys the pictures from the shoot when it is done. But if you'll be recreating this, as usual, don't forget to tag me on social media at KimDaveDesigns. Also, let me know if you want me to try out more draping styles. I think it's something I might be open to, so leave a comment down below and we might possibly make that happen for the future. Until next time, have a good morning, afternoon and evening wherever you are. Bye.